My name is Sepide Razania. I go by she, her pronouns. I used to live, I no longer live in Oregon, but I used to live in North Plains, Oregon, for those of you who are familiar with the area. We are here on behalf of Oregon Multifamily Energy Program, which is a program administered by OHCS. I am with UNRUS. UNRUS works at the cross-section of equity and clean energy and is one of the two firms that's helping ORMEP with facilitation and support of the DEI coalition. And I'll pass it on to my colleague.
Thank you. I am Joan Effinger. I'm with a company called In Color. We're the other company to facilitate the DEI sessions. You'll see in the program, my colleague Quinn Parker was supposed to be here, but she was not able to come, so you guys get me instead. I am local here. I live in the Portland Metro. And we're with a company called In Color. We do a lot of DEI and equity justice work in energy efficiency program designs. And I'll pass it really quickly to my colleague, Ashley.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ashley Arhin. I'm also with In Color. I was born and raised in Seattle, Washington. I currently live just outside of Atlanta, Georgia. So I'm excited to be here with you all today. And thank you for joining us. We are excited to get into this workshop.
So, okay. Do you advance it or do we advance it here? Oh, there we go. Okay. So hopefully the workshop today that we're about to embark on feels different to you. We are not going to stand here and talk at you for 1 hour and 15 minutes. Our hope is that we have a very interactive, collaborative workshop where you all are having a dialogue with each other. So you're going to be getting up, you're going to be moving around the room. We have a few slides we'll present here, but then most of the time we're actually going to be working with sticky notes on the slide. We'll have some small group discussions, etc. So we have a limited time available with us today, so hopefully you can listen, be present in the moment. We all have watches, we have phones in our pockets, we have computers. It'd be great if we could focus for the next 1 hour and 15 minutes. Please be respectful. This is going to hopefully be a really interactive session. If you have something to say, raise your hand. We'll try to facilitate. Just please don't interrupt anybody if they're talking. And this is a safe place. Some of the things that we might talk about today might be triggering for some people. It might be uncomfortable for some people, but we want you to know that we're looking for all of your best ideas today. Out of the box thinking. There's no such thing as a dumb idea or something that might work as we go through this session today. The idea is that whatever comes first into your mind is probably the right thing and what we need to be talking about. So consider this a safe place where everybody is here to learn. Everybody is here hopefully to get something great out of this workshop. Next. So what we'll do a little bit, spend about 15 minutes on a background of what are we talking today? How do we do outcome-based approaches to program design in equity and racial justice? So we have a few slides that will kind of introduce the topics and how we do this. And then we'll spend most of our time today doing what we call putting it to practice, where we'll be asking you some questions. You'll be answering those questions, and then you'll be working in small groups together to figure out how to do it on a topic. And then at the end, we'll bring it all together. So what we're going to do today in this workshop is a small piece of a continuous process. So at the end, we'll bring all of you back together and kind of discuss how you would do this back in your organizations and what the next steps would be if you do this within your organizations. So first of all, what is program theory? So if we think of a program any of you are running, I'll just use an example of affordable housing in rural Oregon. there could be a program working to increase affordable housing in rural Oregon. So in this case, the program theory, what we want to do is explain the why and the how we're going to do this program. So why is this program existing? What are the goals for what we're trying to do? Why are we doing this? Who are we trying to help? And then the how is like, what are we going to do? We need to increase the number of contractors. We need more funding. We need more people, whatever the how may be. So as we go through today, when we're thinking about outcome-based programs, keep in mind why and how are we doing what we're doing. Next slide. So what we're going to go through today in program-based theory is we want to articulate the problem. What do we want to do at the end? What are those goals? What are those outcomes that we want to see? Increased affordable housing, increased racial equity, whatever that may be. What is the outcome that we're looking for? Articulating the problem. Why is this a problem? Why aren't we getting there? What are the barriers to being able to achieve those outcomes that we're looking for? How can we address those barriers? What can be done to overcome those barriers? That's what we call activities. What are the things that we're going to do that help overcome those barriers so we can reach our goals? The what, identify and approach. Some of the things that we talk about today might be something that you can do or somebody else in the room can do. There might be some things that nobody can do. There's not enough funding. There's a technology advancement that needs to happen. There's things that we'll be able to control. There's things that we won't be able to control. So what do we do that supports our approach? And then evaluate the effectiveness. We'll kind of come back to this at the end, but when you're looking at outcome-based approaches, you want to always be evaluating, how am I doing? Are we reaching the goals that we set? Are the activities or the things that we're doing having the impact that we're looking to have? And if not, let's pivot those and figure out a new activity. So this is always a continuous cycle of what we want to go through. Now I'll pass it off.
Thank you, Joan. So what's the typical approach to usually like program design or approaching a problem is someone comes and says, hey, you've got this funding or you've got this resource. And we get all excited. We could do this with it, right? So we start with the resources we have. And then we go and say, based on this resource or this thing that's given to us, these are the type of activities we could do, or this is the strategy we could use. And we get an outcome from it, right? It's something happens, hopefully, based on those activities. And what we're thinking in an outcome-based approach is to actually pivot and turn this over to its head. If you could advance, please. Yeah, so what we're proposing is think about that North Star you want to get to. This is the outcome you want to get to. It's it could be really big, it could be really grand, it could be imagined as something that's not easily possible, but make sure that you have that North Star in front of you. This is how I could bring the goal I want with an equitable approach and keeping social, racial justice in mind in that process. And of course, we all know that there are challenges as we're trying to march our way to that outcome. And we want to be honest and we want to be clear about what are those challenges, what are those roadblocks, barriers, what is in our way. But at the same time, when we keep thinking about challenges, it can be really, depressing and sad, right? But there is also a lot of opportunities out there that is in the marketplace. Think about, all the activities that's happening. And you could see in this last 2 days of conference, right? So much passion, so much energy, some things that are happening in the marketplace, other organizations that are doing the work. And those are your opportunities to think about. So as I'm thinking about my North Star, the end goal I want to get to, in addition to roadblocks, What are the things that are already happening that I can align myself with to get to those outcomes? And then once you outline all of those, then you actually go through the activities or strategies you could take with the intention to get to that outcome, to overcome and essentially remove those barriers and roadblocks, right? And thinking about how can I sustainably remove those in a way that it's not going to come back up again, so thinking about activities and strategies in a way to remove those roadblocks and leverage those opportunities that are in the marketplace to get you again to that North Star and the outcome. Then it's the time to think about resources, right? And we all know we have limited resources, but if you actually put that aside and try to think big box, out of the box and imagine big, then go back to your resources. It's an easier way and a more plausible way to pick the most impactful activities to get you to that North Star. That's what we're proposing on an outcome-based approach. Again, like bringing always the attention to that end goal you want to get to. This, kind of gets you aligned to that level. I'm going to pause and see how this resonates with you, what you think about it. If anyone has anything to share, we are going to break into, I guess, our activity right after this, to workshop this. And I'll pass it to John.
I'm sure you all have a lot of questions and have no idea what we're talking about yet. We've used a lot of words, we've described a process, and you're like, I have no idea what you people are talking about, why am I here? We'll figure it out together. I'm just gonna pause. Any questions so far? No, okay. So we're gonna kind of transition into the putting it into practice. So for the next roughly 45 minutes or so, we want to use this approach on a topic. So I'm going to throw it out to all of you. Does anybody have a program or a goal that they want to use as an example? So maybe you all you're working on a project or a program in your organization and you have some sort of issue you would like to work through. Yes. Increasing tenant diversity in properties. Good one. Anybody else? Say now or forever hold your peace. We're going to go with that one unless there's other ideas. Increasing access to prenatal care for unhoused families. I'm repeating it. They're writing as we're going. So. Increasing access to prenatal care for unhoused families. Yep.
I want humanity to get over facing someone's worth, pigmentation in their skin. I mean,
I like it. Let's write it down. Solve racism. It's okay. We like to think big here. Yeah. That's a good one. Getting minority-owned businesses to be engaged in affordable housing. Okay. As you will see, since we're kind of doing this, we're facilitating as we're hearing what we need. We might take a minute or two here and there to kind of confer on next steps. Now is the time. You're going to get up and move around the room. So we're going to Break up into these 4 groups. I'm gonna put 7 people online. Okay, I'll come back to that. If you would like to solve racism, I'm giving that one to you. Join this table, please. If you would like to talk about minority-owned, how do we get minority-owned businesses to be engaged in affordable housing, please come over to this table. If you would like to talk about increasing, maybe that one too, increasing tenant diversity at affordable housing, maybe this table. And if you would like to increase access to prenatal care for unhoused families, you're going to have to make a decision which table to go to. Huddle, make friends, bring chairs, etc. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna think on the fly a little bit here. What we're gonna do next in each of your groups is, Sepida is passing out some stickies. Let's go with orange stickies, or break it like in half. Just break the pad in half. Sorry, I want everybody to be working on the same color. It'll just help later. So on your orange stickies, you might need a couple of note takers in each group. What we're gonna spend about 5 minutes within your group is brainstorming what would your outcome be. So I'll use this group as an example. This group's talking about minority-owned businesses to be engaged in affordable housing. So if you were successful at this, what would the future state look like? Would it be 50% of businesses who are engaged in affordable housing are minority owned? Is it 20%? Is it something else? What does that end state look like where you can say, we have reached our goal? What have we accomplished? Does that make sense? And so just since normally these workshops, we take like 4 to 6 hours. So you guys are getting a really short condensed amount of time. So maybe think, we can throw out all the goals in the world. We're gonna constrain you a little bit today just for our time purposes. Think of maybe 2 to 3 good goals that we can work off. 2, she's saying 2, okay, 2. Choose 2. So have some discussion, and then ultimately what I'm looking for from each group is 2 goals written on stickies, the orange stickies, where you have the goal written down. 1 goal per sticky, yes. How many minutes do they have? About 5 minutes. No pressure. And just keep in mind, this is like so that you can feel what the process looks like and how you do it, not that we're actually going to solve anything today.
Can you guys hear me? Hello?
Hi, yes, I can.
Wow.
I was typing, is it specifically like regarding um the racial justice specifically, or
Yeah.
I had a work email that took me away for a minute, so I missed a little bit of this part of it. I apologize.
They're asking what they're. So if we could focus on access to prenatal care for unhoused families, that'll be our topic point, and then we are discussing what should the program accomplish and thinking about goals around it.
That could be like pop-up clinics
Yeah,
in lower income communities that can come to either those communities or like shelters and everything that provide free or low cost healthcare for prenatal care.
writing
I was like, I don't know if I should type it or write it.
it.
That's the first thought that comes to mind on it, is more so like those free or low cost clinics that can do pop-up clinics in those more in those areas where they may not have clinics or access as easily, like in the rural
Two to
areas.
3 minute warning.
Thank you. Is that Shendrix or is that a first initial?
Of course. So yeah, what I was saying before she popped back up was like, or even just pop-up clinics or the mobile clinics that could even go to the rural areas where they may not have as easily accessible clinics or anything for low income also. So just
Pop-up room.
Mhm.
Any other thoughts or anybody else with any thoughts on?
As a reminder, there's no wrong answer. We have about 1 minute left. Whatever idea you're talking about right now, put to paper.
Or like a community event where doctors or nurses can come to the property if it's for low income. Like how they have vaccine clinics, maybe like a prenatal clinic where testing can be done.
Community medical thing.
Hmm. And it's my first initial and last name. So my first name is Savannah.
Thank you. And Talia can jump in as well. We're focusing on access to prenatal care for tenants. Hold on a minute.
They're having fun.
So I guess I'll speak on this topic along with like the community medical focused event. Something that occurs in my community is I do community baby showers. They do that in North County and to
Okay, I have to be that moderator that cuts off all the wonderful discussion I hear going on. If we can wrap up conversation, you all can also choose to come back to this if you want to come back, but I want to move on to our next step. So our next step, Sabata passed out, what color? Pink stickies, okay? Where what we're going to talk about next is the barriers. So if you look at your orange stickies, the goals that you have set for your program, what is getting in the way of reaching that ultimate goal? Your job, your mission here is a little bit different. Write everything down. If somebody suggests a barrier, put it on a piece of paper. So I would suggest spreading the stickies so you can have more than one person writing. There's no wrong answers. 5 minutes for what are the barriers getting in the way of reaching that goal. Pink stickies for barriers. And I'm gonna call out this team over here. They're naturally putting their goals up on the wall. This is what we wanna do. For you all, the wall might not make sense. You might wanna use your table, but it would be great as you're writing the barriers on the pink stickies, link it to that goal. What goal does that barrier go with? If you have multiple goals, if you only have one goal, doesn't matter. All barriers are for that goal, but so the way that this might work for like this large group or other large groups is you might want to have a couple people writing, a couple people putting it on the wall as people are just, you're brainstorming, throwing out ideas. Every sticky is a barrier. We got stickies. We got lots of stickies. Rip them in half. Yeah, rip them in half. Do whatever you want. Yes. There should be a ratio of your pink sticky should go to one orange sticky, but then you'll have multiple pinks under each orange.
If you run out of sticky, split it in half, or you have some smaller stickies too.
great. I mean, it's not a great example. We're limited in a community where there is only one hospital. Um, and Virginia.
I think your microphone keeps breaking up, so it's hard to hear what you're saying.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt the thinking yet again. As I said, we're going to move quickly. If we can come back together, I'll tell you all the next steps. You can always choose to go back to barriers if you want to keep talking. So now the next step, I told this group, because there's a lot of barriers going up on the wall, that if you need to group it, so we want to keep barriers with the goals that you're talking about, but there might be some natural ways to group your barriers. So maybe funding issues, government issues, whatever kind of natural groupings you may have. Take a minute here, not right now, but in a minute, to group your barriers. Because what we're going to do next is kind of a 3-step process. So what we want to do is I'll just use funding as an example. There's a group that wants, I'm just making this up, I don't know if it's a barrier you've talked about, but your goal is 100% of pregnant women have access to prenatal care, even if they're unhoused, something like that. So let's just say funding is a problem. Let's say there's just not enough doctors. I don't know if those are your barriers, I'm making them up. What we want to do next is say, what activities can we, and by we I'm meaning a global we, not necessarily you or whatever organization you represent, but what can we as a society, what are the activities that we could do? What can we do to overcome those barriers? So if you identified there's not enough doctors, maybe an activity is provide funding to send people to medical school, as an example. So what are these activities that you want to list out that will help you overcome the barriers? Hold on, we have a couple other things. So as you think about this next step, it's going to be green. We're not quite done. If you can keep listening just for a second. We're talking about activities on the green, sticky. When you talk about an activity such as increasing funding so more people can go to medical school, I want you to also come up with what we call in program design an output. Another word is a metric or a KPI, key performance indicator. How many doctors do you want to fund? How much money do you think you might need to do? So think of the activity and then think of how you would measure whether you're successful at that activity. I use how many as an example. You don't need a quantitative metric. It could be qualitative. It could be satisfaction. People are happy, more people are engaged. You know, it can be a qualitative output as well. So so blue, yes. So put on your green sticky, the activities. We'll be passing around blue stickies for your output. How do you measure if you're being successful? What data do you need to know that activity is working or not working, or we're going in the direction that we want to go? I also think I forgot to say, as you're thinking of your activity, put it next to whatever barrier. So you have orange, your goal, you have a pink barrier, you have a green activity, and a blue outcome. Okay, I'm gonna have to interrupt all the great thought going on again. Wrap up. You'll have some more time. Be patient. I mean, you can't solve ending racism in 15 minutes. Let's wrap up with the current thought. Wherever you got to is fine. There's no right or wrong. You will not be scored. Okay. Can you hold the thought? Okay, so the next step, you can continue talking, but the next step might make some people uncomfortable. Some people might love it. We're gonna ask that you nominate somebody from your group to share with the rest of the participants here today how this exercise changed something for you. Like, did you think about program design in a different way? Did you learn something from your colleagues here today that you maybe wouldn't have thought about if we started in our traditional, what resources do we have and where can we go? Like, what has shifted for you today in this workshop that you feel like you could leave and use in your organization? So I'm going to give you 2 whole minutes to talk amongst your group, to figure out and nominate a person to speak up, and then we'll go to each group, and we would just love to hear what your experience was and what your, if it changed how you approach anything. And go.
Sorry, I had a
Okay. I hope each group has somebody nominated and ready to speak. Are there any volunteers? Otherwise, I will call on people. Okay, I'm going to pass off here to this group. If you could please be respectful of your colleagues.
Yeah. What was our question? What was the original question? The original issue? Minority-owned businesses engaged in affordable, okay, got it. Yeah, so our question was, how do we get more minority-owned businesses engaged in affordable housing? And we identified two different issues, or I guess outcomes, that an outcome that we would see as success would be the percentage of minority people in a community would be reflective of the minority-owned businesses on any job site. So there's only 30% minority population in a region, then 30% minority-owned businesses on that project. And then also just to increase the amount of minority-owned businesses for contractors to choose from. So there's a lot of issues there. For me, what I learned, so I run the Earth. Oh, sorry. Yeah, okay. I run the Earth Advantage certification program, and within that certification, we have points, elective points for having COVID or minority-owned businesses on a project. I personally think that we can do more to help that, but what I learned from this group, I'm a white person, I don't own my business, but I didn't understand the challenges for an organization to get COVID certification. So while somebody is a minority, it shouldn't be as hard or as expensive or as time consuming as it is to actually get that. I didn't know that. And so perhaps that, there's something that I can do in my space, in my organization, that can help make that easier, or at least encourage more contractors and require more contractors to actually seek that out. So more of the stick rather than the carrot. If you want this funding, if you want to participate in this, then you have to engage more COVID or minority-owned businesses. How do we get more of that? How do we kind of loosen the red tape for organizations to be able to get that certification so that they can be more engaged? Anybody else want to add anything?
Thank you, thank you.
Not just that certification, there's a lot of certifications that are needed, like plumbers and electricians, certifications that are barriers to get into that in contracting. So we want to address all of them.
Okay, thank you. All right, next group, are you? Okay, hold on a second. Let me get the mic so people on the Zoom can hear you.
Thank you. I think that one piece that goes with that is trust, right? Already minority-owned businesses do not have that much trust on this process of certification. So like, how do we break that barrier? How do we make sure that they feel like they're welcome, like they can bring and turn all their paperwork in and all their taxes and stuff so that they can get certification? Do we really need the certification then? Maybe there's a different way.
Okay, does this group want to go next? All right, okay.
Okay. So none of us are in the field, right? So we had a little bit different experience because none of us are in the field. Happy to take a picture and share the notes. Dodo if we're on base or off base. Thanks. So our report out is a little different. Sure, the goal that was articulated is to increase access to prenatal care for unhoused pregnant women. And we broke it into two groups. 100%, our goal was 100% of pregnant women can receive prenatal care, and to achieve universalized healthcare access for all. Right? I mean, we kind of went that way. But our experience, what we're prepared to report on, is more the experience, like what the exercise kind of brought forward for us. One is that none of us really knew what existed. So we spent a little bit of time, like, I don't know, what are there programs? Where are they? And we stumbled just a little bit, but then, once we realized, well, let's just write that down as a barrier, and, then we could flow, then we started flowing right through it. The approach of shooting for the stars, even if it's unmeasurable, I mean, eventually we got there, right? Eventually it kind of broke down into some outcomes and some measurables we could start to wrap our hands around. The recognition that the mindset of scarcity really limits thinking and process. And so again, kind of that global, start global, and eventually you'll get there. And then a comment about this approach really, the aha is this approach really allows more space to focus work and identify outcomes and around racial equity issues. Like it just kind of opened up the discussion much broader. If you're just focused on, well, you know, we don't have any resources. So that's kind of that was our feedback.
Thanks so much. And I was actually really impressed to hear no one was in the field, so brave souls, thank you. All right, can I pass it on to you? You ready? All right.
All right, so we had increased tenant diversity in affordable housing. Our two goals were to reduce the existing barriers for tenants into affordable housing. So things like, you know, previous rental history, criminal history, et cetera. And then also improve the wait list or lottery system. So we came up with a number of different barriers, and there was a lot of overlap in the barriers for both of them. There was a lot of consistency. I think ultimately, like things like cultural competency, cultural accessibility, being trauma informed, basically just making sure that there are good partners for government agencies to work with to address both of these things. That was the real key policies that I think we came upon. As far as what we learned, I think what we learned is that because we all work in the field in some way, our mind already went to the barriers. So before we even could come up with goals, we were talking we had a long list of barriers written down. We could not even make it that far in the project. We were just coming up with barriers left and right. And so I think that probably told us a lot about us and the fact that it's a very difficult field to work in.
Thank you for sharing that. Sometimes I wonder if we are the barrier to the problem too, so that kind of speaks to that. All right, last group. Did you? I know, I want to hear what this group did.
Oh, Lord, bear with me, y'all. First, I want to give flowers to this group of amazing people. It was so wonderful to engage with them. Let's see, let me stand up here so I can read my stuff. I'm gonna ask you to bear with me. I'm excitable, but I'm also nervous. So, how to achieve humanity to get past racism. Let's solve racism. Some of what are the starting ones called? The goals, right? We're restoring indigenous practices globally. Finding a way to create a new government. And to remove racism from government policy. Some of the barriers that we witnessed were erasure and denial of the communities that already exist globally, the communities that have been here for thousands and thousands of years, tending to land. Oh Lord, we had so much on here, y'all, solving racism in 45 minutes. We also recognize healthcare concerns in the communities that have disappeared, blood quantum, the patriarchy, right? A lot of indigenous communities were very matriarchal. The lack of representation and sovereignty. So allowing folks to speak for themselves. And in this moment, I'm gonna give recognition to the Clackamas, Multnomah, and Calthamet tribes that existed on the land that we are on today. Thank you. Another big one, capitalism. People are very money focused. So if we were able to take that system and kind of tear it apart, we would see a lot of change, right? Also the climate crisis. What kind of world are we leaving? What kind of ancestors do we want to be? What do we want to pass down? Toxic masculinity, right? Kind of going back to that indigenous sovereignty in those matriarchal ways. White men. Again, we also recognize capitalism as a barrier, colorism, money. Again, we talked about blood quantum. And what is this one that says? The model minority myth. Is everybody familiar with what that is? So the model minority myth is pretty much almost like reverse racism in a sense. When we think about specifically, I'll name Asian communities and how they have the stereotype of being very good at math and they're so smart. But how does that actually damage the community's image, and how does that like prevent them from representing themselves? So the model minority myth is pretty much over fantasized ways that we see other communities based off of our own perceptions. These are oh, yes, our activities. So BIPOC specific education, mass denial of current power structures, build up of the new, wait, what does it say? Build up of new jointly created structures. Let's see what we got over here. Raising up folks currently on the bottom. So being able to bring people up, right? We recognize that racism was a systematic structure that left folks thousands of years behind, millions of dollars behind. So being able to like bring folks up and let them, how do I say this? Bringing folks up so that they can be on the same level that white folks got to start at. I think that's the most colloquial term I got for you. We also talked about reparations, and specifically when we talk about reparations, we are not only talking about reparations for Black folks, but we are talking about reparations for multiple marginalized communities, whether that be veterans, whether we're talking about folks who were sent to Japanese internment camps in California. Reparations for all. Community conversations and events. So being able to be boots on the ground, that's a lot of the work that I do. I'm very community and local based in Eugene and Lane County. Understanding the community needs, right? So allowing folks to be able to speak for themselves. You can't tell somebody what they need because they can tell you themselves. And then methodical demolition. This one was a really big one for us. And can you tell me your name? And Natalie actually brought this to us from the Equity Summit that you were able to attend yesterday? Yes. And so this is a specific activity that looks at being able to break systems down bit by bit. So having government, right? How many systems are built into that? And what would happen if we were to tear it all down at once? Instead, the methodical demolition allows us to, I'll use your analogy, right? Say you're trying to remodel a house. Instead of tearing the entire thing down, maybe you start with the windows and then you start with the stairs. And by the time you're done with your project, you have something brand new. I think if you could do one of the outputs and maybe share just a second about your overall experience in the group. Yes. Sorry, I told you we had a lot. Ooh. Ooh. This one? All right. Increase, oh yes, this one. Increase in the life expectancy of BIPOC, so of people of color. Absolutely. And I think the way that this has changed my perspective, as someone with ADHD, it's kind of hard to organize things or to think about big projects. So being able to look at this framework really is going to impact kind of all the work that I do. There's not only one right way to accomplish something, and believing in one right way is a tenet of white supremacy. We don't do that. So yeah, I appreciate the perspective. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Wow. This was really great.
Okay, so we have 2 minutes left, so it's my turn to be really quick. I just wanted to point out that this is a continuous work. When we're doing like what my career does is program design. So I design programs to solve whatever barriers to get you to whatever goal that you're trying to get to. So in this process, we just wanted to point out that this is part of a larger cycle, what we did today. We're talking here about just the design, right? So in theory, you design a program, you go out, you start implementing it, you start doing the things. Then you need to evaluate, are we being successful? Are we tearing down those barriers? Are we overcoming those barriers that we think we want? All those metrics you put on your blue paper, are these trending in the right way? Are we having the impact that we intended to have? Let's just say the answer is no, we need to switch something. but we don't know what. Maybe you need to go out, you need to do some research. I heard everybody talking about how talking to the community, letting them speak for themselves. So maybe you need to go out and talk to the community a little bit to figure out, this isn't working, what else might work? Get out there, talk to people, then replan, redesign, and keep going. So the process that we laid out for you today is not supposed to be a static process. It's supposed to be something that you come back to figure out. Hopefully, let's just be positive. Let's say we blow it out of the water, we're wildly successful. We need a change so we can do more and keep going. So you want to come back to this. It's not something you develop and put on a shelf and put away. It's something that you can operationalize and keep coming back to throughout time.
Yeah, and so we're at time. First off, I want to really appreciate all of you who joined us. Hopefully, I took away a lot from hearing the conversations you had, but we want to leave you with fairly, I think, a picture that a lot of you are familiar with in describing equality and equity. So just something to keep in mind as you think about designing programs or thinking about solving a problem that you have at hand, using potentially the approach that we're suggesting here today, or like Jamani said, any other approach that would work. Think about what would be the activities you're doing. How could you do those activities to achieve the equity that you want to eventually achieve? Like if you think about outreach, do you have equal outreach access for everyone? Or do you have to actually balance that based on the needs of the communities you're serving? You know, a lot of programs go and provide equal funding and equal incentives. Is that the right approach? Or do you want to actually think about your incentives in a way that lifts the ones who need the most to have that equal, equitable outcome at the end, right? So just, I guess, picture is worth 1,000 words, and we wanted to leave you with this very familiar picture as you wrap up the work. Then maybe you want to go back to your, if we had time, we would have you go back to your activities and think about it from this perspective, but just keep that with you in your mind, and best of luck this afternoon and enjoy tomorrow. Thank you for joining us.
And if anybody wants to take your stickies, go for it. Take them home, keep working on it.